Hey everyone, it's Melissa. Welcome back to another episode of the Social Angle Podcast. I am so excited to introduce you to my guest, Matt. And we're going to be talking about a topic that I think is on everybody's mind for 2021, the future of event marketing, hybrid events, and trade shows. So Matt brings a lot of experience. I feel like he's been in marketing for a really long time and comes from the hospitality industry. So I'm excited to hear some of his feedback to the questions that I have. How are you doing today, Matt?
I'm doing great. Makes me sound old though that I've been in marketing a long time, but I don't know.
My bad. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I didn't mean to like age you on this podcast, Matt. My bad. My bad. But I'm really excited because I think, again, like you have such a unique perspective, but this is the time to tell us about you, pitch yourself, like tell us a little bit about who you are, what makes you tick, what's your current position?
Yeah. Well, my background originally was in education and history,
Okay.
and I was a marketing major in college. I did that for 2 semesters, and I thought it was the most boring thing. I forget what class it was, but I had like this epiphany of like, oh my God, like I can't be doing this the rest of my life.
You were like,
So it's interesting how stuff comes full circle.
right?
But
Plot twist.
I got a little disillusioned with academia, and then I got involved in wine promotions, and then I did all the marketing for a winery here on the
What
East
was this like segue into that though? You know what I mean? Like going
Coast.
from
It was yeah,
like, please buy wine for me. Like what?
it it was completely sort of random because I was like a big fan of wine before, and I won't tell you like how many. Oh, that's actually I'll tell you that later. But yeah, I was just a big fan of wine, and it was just kind of I didn't have any, like, obviously as someone with like a master's in history, like not any like background in, I mean, I was knowledgeable about wine, something that I like to learn about. And but yeah, it was just kind of happenstance. And then I did a good job with sort of winery promotions and events. Like, it was a lot of events. And
Yeah.
then they hired me to do their marketing, all their marketing. So that was more of a behind the desk thing, which was fun too. But events, wine events are fun. I have lots of stories to tell. But you know, some of them, yeah, people get a little, crazy when they go to wine events for sure.
I'm sure. I'm sure that's like a whole other episode, a good behind the scenes like tidbits, because I can imagine. And like, what a unique industry. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's got to be a job that's probably fulfilling because of the variety. As somebody myself who gets bored doing the same thing, having those opportunities to like integrate different aspects of marketing together and like bring that into an actual like physical experience, I think is so cool. Like the people who really do well with event marketing, like it's really truly an art form. It's not just like ordering pizza, putting up some balloons. It's like, the things that people come up with. It's pretty amazing. So that's like an interesting experience. But what are you doing currently? I know that you currently manage the marketing for 25 hotels, right? What's the name of your company?
Yeah, I work for Gulph Creek Hotels. I'm
Okay.
the marketing manager there. I work above property. So yeah, we currently have 25 hotels. They each have their own, depending on size, their own sales and marketing team. And then I kind of sit above and help them with kind of bigger picture um, things, which has been quite a trial to go through during the last 10 months with
Yeah.
COVID, because things have changed so much, and a lot of our hotels are branded. So the big two being, Marriott and Hilton. So
Oh,
keeping up with the trends with what brand compliance with them and their marketing initiatives, because we're very much have to follow what, their kind of guidelines. And they've done both brands have done a terrific job of kind of trying to, communicate to guests and prospective clients about, the safety and the precautions that we're taking.
I mean, honestly, when you told me about your background when we originally met, like that was the first thing I thought about, which is like there's been certain, like every industry has been affected in some way, shape, or form, but some more so than others. And I think hospitality took such a huge hit. And I mean, when you can't, physically have a certain number of people in a space, and that's such a huge channel for marketing, like whether it's events, catering, like business meetings, there's just so many things that maybe aren't on the table, or you're trying to figure out between hitting the other boxes that you have to check for other duties that you have. Like now I have to learn these new regulations or compliance, and then pivot, like to offer maybe something, supplementary in the meantime, hopefully before things, hopefully soon go back to normal or some semblance of normal. So for the event side of what you guys do across, it sounds like you have like more of a strategy role. What were some of the questions or problems that you were solving in relation to event marketing across those 25 hotels last year with a pandemic?
Yeah, I think that it's a great question. I think that one of the biggest things, and like all of our properties are a little different. So, some of them they're more like social event focused, where they'll do weddings or small group gatherings. Others, um, some bigger ones that do conferences and more kind of corporate stuff. And I think the biggest challenge was um, kind of handling because at least when COVID first started, there was a lot of people that tried to just push things back, their events to like the fall or late summer, hoping that things would change. Um, and we're seeing that happen again. I think in some markets, especially like that corporate meeting. I don't know if that's going to come back until Q3, of this year. Hopefully it does sooner, but I think the hardest thing was, communicating with our guests about that, and about and especially like, because I mean, digital marketing is sort of my wheelhouse. So making sure that those things are communicated online. I know like when things were first happening, we got inundated with not only phone calls at the properties, but also emails, social media posts, are you doing this? Can I still have my wedding? Uh,
Mhm.
so I mean, like those kind of just the communication part. I think that was the biggest challenge, because obviously, like people don't want to cancel. Um, you know, maybe some events they want to cancel, but for the most part, people were bummed to have to put off these events that they were doing. So I think that was the communication factor was probably the biggest thing.
Okay. So how did you guys kind of like mobilize? Because I think this is a question I always like to ask people, because like I know for us, like we had to shift really quickly and stop a lot of the content we had going out. And then we were producing so much content prolifically because we were really trying to meet our readers where they were at, because we were getting a lot of questions, like whether it was through email, social, just the industry connections we have with like peers in our industry, being like, what comes next, or people who are like, they would have a certain business problem presented to them because of the repercussions of everything that was going on. So we're like, what resources can we pull together to provide like educational resources that can give people guidance? And, it was not an easy feat. And I am certainly not responsible for that. Like I give hats off to our editorial team, but for you and managing everything, kind of sounding like the point person, what did you guys put in place to kind of streamline communication?
Yeah, it's great. It's great question. A challenge because different brands, Hilton, Marriott, Hyatt. We actually developed internally. I did like a recovery roadmap, which its first iteration, it went through a couple iterations, like to give the properties like the specific um, guidance in terms of like there was a section for um, reaching out to prospective clients about what kind of things we could do, developing a virtual, because obviously like the hospitality industry in a lot of ways is still kind of um, a very person to person industry.
Yeah.
So a lot of times like booking an event or a group, you'd have the person come into the hotel, you give them a tour, show them around, make that personal connection. So, developing a virtual, tour to give to people. Like, it was full of a lot of stuff, and it got to the point that it was so big that we moved it to, we have a management website for our employees, so kind of moved it all onto there, so that it could be more easily updated, because it was obviously, because it was going through a lot of, from, I think the first one I had was in June, and then revised it in August, and then it was having to be revised too often. But I mean, trying to take, like, a lot of the stuff, like those physical touch points, and you know making them digital, which is, like I said, like, it's a challenge, I think, in the hospitality industry, because it is, um, not always the most, like, tech savvy, um, because it does rely on those personal relationships, and those are hard to, um, maintain when you can't, call somebody up, or, visit them in person.
Yeah. And I like love though, like just going back to the fact that you had like a document that was accessible. Like it sounds like you created this and it went through a couple of revisions, but that you guys have tech in place where like the other hotels, if they have a question, like it's not somebody coming into your inbox or somebody else's. It's like, here's the set plan we have. That probably, provided a lot of comfort to the other teams that you manage, because there's like, okay, this is how we're handling things and standardizing stuff. Because I think that was some of the issues across the board for a lot of industries, is like, okay, we're looking at this scenario, this is how we traditionally do things. I have a suggestion for how we can maybe supplement it in the meantime. I also have this other suggestion. What are we doing in the meantime? What's going to not cause headaches? Like, what new software do we need to invest in? What are the new protocols? So I like that you guys really thought like high level and then like tweaked it as you went. But then in the meantime, like you guys have something solid that everybody has access to. And I feel like even if you don't have like a company website, just having a strategy document and like your shared drive, of like what protocols are would be so helpful for people, because again, like you don't want to be inefficient, you don't want to lose that sale, you don't want to make communication worse than maybe it was because of everything that was going on. So it's kind of like, again, your customers can be in the know and your staff can be in the know, so that's really cool. So in regards to transitioning some of your touch points for events digitally, what went into that? Like, what are some of the technology that you guys use outside of doing like a roadmap?
Yeah, and so besides, like, the website that we developed, that we didn't, I mean, we have like a front facing website, corporate website, but we didn't have an internal, employee website. So that was something that we developed early on in the pandemic for communication. We also utilize Band. Not sure if you're familiar with that, the app.
No.
It's an app where you can, like, create groups, and we post on there regular. Everyone posts. We have like a sales one, and then we have like a general manager one, and it's just cool. You can share videos or pictures, or it's
Is
just
it
something.
like Slack? Like kind of
Yeah.
like
Yep.
okay.
Yeah. It's like a invite only, and it's yeah. I mean, that's just like another tool. And we still do like um we will do Zoom calls, with properties, just to talk and share and go over their website, or um you know any kind of thing that we're working on. So I mean, those are kind of like the basic tools that we use for kind of communication. The hotels themselves, in terms of like communicating with guests, obviously, um like, email has become, much more important in terms of, communicating, on site, whether or not, a restaurant's open, or a gym's open, um, those kind of things. Definitely creating a lot of new, digital collateral for the hotels whether it's like modified uh, meeting space,
Mm.
diagrams, um, or highlighting new services. Like even today, I was working on, one of our hotels is trying to sell their meeting space to bridal groups that are looking for a space to get ready. So like makeup and hair kind of thing. And that's not something that probably in the past we would have, created something for, or solicited business for, but it's probably one of the areas, the social, that people are, I think, really anxious to get back to. Um, so
Yeah. Oh no, I'm sorry.
oh
I
no,
just
it's
like continue.
no, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think that's so cool, like the innovation piece. You know what I mean? Like, I think people's creativity, their willingness to adapt, and like those places they can kind of look for innovation with like what they have to still offer their customers something worthwhile, even if it's not like ideally what they want. So I think that's cool. Like those three things, and also streamlining the communication, like internally and externally, and developing new assets. So for you, in your experience in hospitality, what do you think is next for the industry? Like, what do you think are some things that people should be cognizant of for event trends?
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I think, like I said, the social events I think are going to come back pretty quickly. I think people are antsy to get married and to do those kind of things. And I even in the last, I'd say, couple months, seen a more of an influx in people looking for those. The corporate and conference crowd, even like the properties that we have that don't have it, like a lot of them are, I mean, it's a segment of business that every hotel relies on, is business travel and people going to these kind of conferences. But I don't know how quickly that'll come back for a number of reasons. And I think when it does, it will be more of a hybrid,
Okay.
with digital and in person. And I think too, both Hilton and Marriott have initiatives that they're just starting to roll out this month, in the US, for sort of utilizing their own digital platforms to have meetings, in conjunction with an in-person meeting, um, doing COVID testing before meetings, plus all the stuff that they've instituted, or that we do before, even before people come in with the cleaning regimens and stuff like that. Um, so I think it will come back. But I think it'll be a sort of a hybrid. I think the other thing too is I think a lot of people, at least in like the business world, um, they're the managers and the employees, I think, are probably seeing, like, is there so much of a benefit for us being there in person? Like we were able to do this, digitally, as a cost saving thing. And then I think too, a lot of people, business travelers, probably some of them are enjoying like the time home with their families. So maybe they're not going to be so like, like, why can't we just do this as a Zoom call kind of thing? Uh,
Yeah.
so I think that will happen a bit more. I think there's always going to be a need for, those in person, especially like if it's like a corporate training or something like that. We've done a lot of those kind of events, where people need to be, in the room, for a demonstration or taking a test kind of thing. But yeah, I think the social first, and then the event, the corporate stuff will be kind of a mix.
That's an interesting perspective, but I think like maybe that's where people's kind of like focus is they miss those more personal touches. Like I feel bad. Like I've had friends who they got engaged earlier last year and then March it and they're like, like all that joy and excitement of planning something, which I feel like is, for most, speaking as a woman, it's like a rite of passage, like, getting a wedding planner, thinking about your dress, the event, having all your friends and family being surrounded by like the love of all these people that, now you can only have like 25, and that includes yourself and like your, soon to be husband or whatever. And, people want to do destination weddings. What's travel going to look like? Do people want to risk it? So I think, again, like, I'm not kind of surprised if there's more of like an urgency for people to get back to have those kind of like normal interactions, but there's more like maybe heel dragging for somebody going to a conference or
Right.
something business related, because they're like, I can just show up, in my bedroom in my pajamas with my Crocs on and still like get all the education I need, versus me, schlepping around to table and like workshops in a big like, arena or whatever for like a business conference. So, and also I think too, you make a really good point about like the cost saving aspect, like the amount of money that goes into putting on a really good event. And like you've been forced to find out a way to do that in a different capacity. And digital is really cost effective. Like if you know what you're doing, if you've really thought about planning that event out, it's not going to be the same as in person. And you have to just kind of accept that. But there's other ways to still engage and make it a meaningful experience, even in like a virtual setting. And when you talked about like hybrid events, we spoke to another professional, Cassandra Bailey, who is the CEO of Slice Communications in Philadelphia. And she said the same, like a lot of her colleagues are really interested in that, where it's like you'll meet in a smaller like group, like a smaller group that's allowed. And then there's like a digital component. So it's like this broadcast of this event is happening on this large screen in like Austin, Texas, but it's also happening in like Pennsylvania for this other group. So it's like these hybrid groups that are spread out over the country, where it's like you're still getting to interact with people in a more intimate setting. But, maybe for those people who don't, want to come to something, or they can't because of restrictions, like however you do that, you can still participate like virtually. So I'm interested to see like what happens with that, like if there's going to be a benchmark set by like certain brands, and maybe what positions will come out of it. Like, is there any tech or any job roles you've seen like people hiring for in hospitality to kind of take the baton of managing that, or do you think it's just going to fall on marketing?
Yeah. So I have not seen a lot of like positions that are like for that. I mean, I think that there will be, I think when the demand finally gets there, like when people want to have, um, that kind of, because I mean, I think you do need like a tech expert
Yep.
on site to handle these kind of things if you want to have that kind of like you were mentioning, like to put on that kind of, if you're doing like especially like a multi-location event. But yeah, I think I think that'll come with the demand. I think when somebody's, when a big company plans something like that and rolls it out successfully, you'll see a lot of uh, brand initiatives and probably individual hotels that also start to think about it more.
Yeah, I've already started to see some people like do kind of a mix between like IT and project management. I'm like literally blanking on the title, but it's like somebody specifically, they're like, you're going to be our point person for doing hybrid events. So I feel like there'll be more of like, old ways of event marketing may not be as in demand, but there'll be this whole other like niche that comes up that you'll need people that are experienced, in digital marketing and IT for. Are there any software that you recommend? Like, I feel like I've never looked at so many as I did last year for like trade shows and events. Are there ones that your hotel favors or you like personally?
Yeah, I mean, one that in terms of like like a um for like virtual events.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like Cvent. I mean, they've been around a long time, but they're kind of hospitality standard.
Okay. That
And
explains it.
yeah, I mean, because they're a great lead gen source, as well as they have a platform that can do a lot of interactive stuff, question and answer stuff, and then also too, like both well, all the brands, Hilton, Marriott, IHG, they all have been developing kind of their own digital platforms that they want to integrate into these, as I was mentioning earlier, um, meeting initiatives that they're putting out there.
Okay. So, I got to end with a fun question. So, that being said, what's one fun fact that people don't know about you?
Yeah, well, so I had one in mind, but then I changed it based on when you were asking me about, my interest in wine and stuff like that. I think probably very few people know that I've been to and done wine tastings at, and what's over 500 wineries. I'll just say
Wait,
that.
for real? 500 wineries?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why? Like what? Like was it part of your job or like was
No,
it just like a
it
personal?
just a personal. It goes back to kind of what was like. The wine industry has a very particular culture around it, and
Yeah.
I just kind of like experiencing that. So like even going to like the same winery you get, like any winery you go to, like anywhere in the States or I think anywhere in the world, like you get like it's the same kind of protocol and same kind of things. Like it's like it could be a completely different winery, completely different wines, but it all has like a very familiar feeling. And I just always would have fun like talking to not even so much the like other people there, but like the staff and stuff like that. I just always found it really interesting.
Wow, 500. That's
Yeah.
like how long did it take you to do that number? Like what do you think?
Um, I
Or has
don't
that been
think
like over a lifetime of like being legally like able to drink?
it was probably in a pretty short time. I mean, like I think the most I ever went to in a day was like maybe like 18, which is not like I would suggest like that's marathon pace, especially because most wineries close at like 4 or 5 o'clock.
I'm
So
sorry.
you can figure that out. Like,
You just like planned your whole day. You were like, get ready. Like I'm just gonna marathon it. That's amazing. That's awesome. Do you have a favorite? Like out of your 500, is there like one that stands out where you're like best atmosphere, best selection? Like,
there's a bunch that I like for different reasons, but probably one of the Quintessa, which is a winery in Napa Valley on the Silverado Trail. Um,
okay.
they just have a really interesting um, like feel to their winery and design. It's like it's built into like the side of the mountain, so it's very
Okay.
deceptive. Like when you like it looks kind of like small and sleek, but when you get inside, it's a pretty massive complex, and they do a cool thing too where they don't use a like a lot of wineries do like a crusher to crush the grapes. They actually use and how they built the winery, they have it so they deliver the grapes to the top of the building, and they actually use just gravity to force the grapes down
Wow.
to press the juice. So it's pretty cool.
That sounds awesome. Well, when I get a chance to travel, that'll definitely be a place I'll check out. So thanks for the recommendation. And also, thank you so much for your time. All the insights that you shared are really going to be valuable to our audience. So I appreciate your time today, Matt.